my late grandmother always used to say in Hindi, बेटा घर हमेशा औकात से ज़्यादा लेना चाहिए. The difference is between a Tinder and Shaadi.com.
Life insurance has been in India for a very long period of time. And yet, India is an underinsured country.
What will happen in case you die? It's a very difficult conversation. Any primary breadwinner, male or female, for their respective family, has to be ensuring financial security for your family in case you were not to return home.
And having an untimely death really destroys the entire family.
When a tragedy hits a home, there is only one lady or gentleman who will knock your door to help you out, truly, which is your insurance advisor or your insurance company.
Hello and welcome to Fincast. I'm your host Tanveer Alam. Today we are decoding a lot on what's life insurance and how you should buy and what are the finer aspects of buying life insurance. And we have a perfect host today, Mr. Vaibhav Kumar. In fact, Vaibhav, welcome on board. Let me explain to you about Vaibhav. He started his careers straight away out of college and joined Max Life Insurance as a management trainee. And he rose up the rank and moved out. And today he is heading the entire product development and digital initiative of Access Max Life Insurance. So welcome, Vaibhav.
Thank you, Tanveer. Thank you very much for allowing me to be part of Fincast. Absolute pleasure. I'm very excited. And yes, being born and brought up in this category and in this company, I feel blessed actually. I think it's one of the most important categories in financial services and in personal financial planning.
So let me start with a very important conversation. Life insurance has been in India for a very long period of time. In fact, when we even did not have mutual fund per se, LIC existed. And yet India is an underinsured country. Okay. Now, this is quite surprising to me as well. And I find it difficult to digest that I really have to push people. Now, let me share a very real life story with you. I was doing a workshop in one of my friend's company. Okay. And it was a Singapore based company and he was heading the unit here. When we did that workshop, and I strongly advocated that he should have a term insurance. And I pushed that he should have a minimum 3 crore term insurance. Very reluctantly, with a lot of push, he bought just 2 crore term insurance. It was more like a grudge buy. Okay. Unfortunately, during COVID, he had an untimely death. He was just 50. Leaving two twins, twins. They were studying with my son also. In that state of grief, when I called her wife that your husband had a term insurance, she couldn't hold her excitement. Imagine the turmoil that was growing in her mind about her kids, about her livelihood, because he was the main breadwinner. And having an untimely death really destroys the company, the entire family. Why do people think it's more of an expense and avoid buying life insurance? What is your personal expertise on this?
I think, Tanveer, you brought out a very important point, a very important nuance, I think, a cultural nuance, especially for our country. I think in the life insurance business, there is this saying that, when a tragedy hits a home, right, especially the primary breadwinner of the family, you have many people knocking doors, usually to collect debts or to come and, stake claim on some of these elements. There is only one lady or gentleman who will knock your door to help you out, truly, which is your insurance advisor or your insurance company that will knock your door and provide a claims check to the nominee or to the family. So actually, I continue to believe, anyone who works in this industry continues to believe that this is the most noble profession actually, when it comes to protecting the financial security of your loved ones. Nothing can take more precedence than that. Now, what has happened over a period of time is largely a savings-led economy, right? Where over a period of time, the whole concept or construct of bang for my buck, how will my money work harder? Those constructs have become more and more dominant. And what has happened in this race is that a large part of this country has started to, this kind of avoid this conversation. See, this conversation, Tanveer, at the heart of it, and for all the audience who are watching this right now, that what will happen in case you die, it's a very difficult conversation. Nobody will, get up in the morning and think, oh, what will happen if I die? Nobody will think that. Even if they think that, they will never articulate or discuss that, unlike some of the Western markets, right? So, and therefore, what will I wear? Is there a sale on Myntra? Is the big billion day going on? Is there some discounts happening? Is a conversation. But how will my family survive financially in case I'm not around? Or how will they live a life with a lot of self-respect when I'm not around? Is not a conversation that happens in our households. That is why people like you and me, companies like Fincart, or maybe even a lot of advisor community in this country, when they knock the door and have that conversation, for the first time it shakes the prospect or the customer. That what is this conversation happening? But I think it is extremely, extremely important that we continue having this conversation, whether it is through advertising, whether it is through engagement, through education, or such like podcasts, that this is one conversation you cannot ignore. I think as part of a family or as a responsible person, among the top 3 responsibilities of any primary breadwinner, male or female, for their respective family, has to be ensuring financial security for your family in case you were not to return home. And I think some of the past few years have just explained that to us, what happened in COVID, what we all went through, the kind of anguish a lot of us went through. We saw some of our friends passing away at younger ages, like the example you gave. And even at workplace, so many times when you hear about one of your colleagues, just a tragedy hitting a colleague, and then you realize that someone calling and telling you that, yeah, for that colleague's family, you want to, collect some money, and you feel in this day and age, really, why? So, and I think, therefore, I personally believe buying term insurance for anyone who has any kind of gainfully employed or is earning is a fundamental duty.
Very good.
And ensuring that term insurance is available is a fundamental right.
Correct. I think that's very well said. In fact, we have seen similarly on those note, we have seen a lot of celebrity, a lot of fitness enthusiasts, okay? I mean, dying on the treadmill while exercising, okay? And they're all dying at a young age, okay? But still, there is one thing going around in a lot of young age population when I talk to them is that I'm healthy now, I'll buy this term insurance later. But they fail to realize that at a later stage, they may not get it, they may not be in the good of health, or the premium disproportionately goes up. Given the today's lifestyle, a sedentary lifestyle, an early stage of getting diabetes and blood pressure, increases the chances of increasing the premium drastically.
Absolutely.
So, but still, again, I want to more understand why do people push this buy to a later stage when they can get the same cover at a much lower premium at an early stage. So I want you to answer 2 things. What would be a cover cost when you buy at 25 below 30, or when you buy at say around 40, 45?
So I think the first part of the question, the why of it.
Why?
I think why procrastinate a decision like this? Once
Correct.
again, like you asked in the previous question, this whole construct of this looking at as an expense. Because when you invest your money or put your money in a deposit, the feeling is that this money is growing and creating some kind of a future wealth for you. And that something like term insurance usually gets bracketed as an expense. What I would like to say is that, it is like possibly peace of mind. Okay. If you were to purchase peace of mind today, would you consider that money being paid for peace of mind as an expense? Is the core question. Because when you buy term insurance, I think the important shift of mindset is you're not buying a life insurance plan. You're actually buying a peace of mind, the right to sleep peacefully.
Correct.
I don't think there is any cost or value attached to the right to sleep peacefully. On the second question, which is more objective in nature, I think the premium rates on term insurance or health insurance or any kind of mortality or morbidity based covers usually increase by age, and most of these products are priced by what is called as an IALM. It is basically the experience of mortality or the probability of dying of people at different ages, whether it is a smoker or a non-smoker being slightly different. Interestingly, the way the Indian experience has emerged is that up till the age of, let's say, 30, 31, 32, the increase in premium is not very high actually. But the moment you cross 32, 33, in fact 35, suddenly the slope becomes vertical in terms of increase in premiums for every increase in age. So I always recommend that, and the reason is again the experience that the country has seen in terms of deaths happening as you age increases. That determines pretty much the rate at which the product will be priced by almost all life insurers. So our recommendation always is buy as early as possible. One, to get the advantage of a lower price. Two, make the most of it while you're healthy and fit. Okay, because every time there is a increase in the diabetes, chances of diabetes or hypertension, your life cover cost just doesn't go up 2x or 3x.
And term insurance premium remains same across the life.
Absolutely. And the best part of term insurance, which is the part I was coming to, is unlike some of the other products in general insurance or health insurance space, the term insurance premiums are contractually guaranteed.
Correct.
So whatever you sign today as, let's say, a 20,000 or 25,000 premium, that will not change till the time you are living. So it's I always say, sometimes it's like living in a house. A much important, we all live in houses, right? And we need houses to live in. You live in a house where the rent is fixed. The earlier you move into that house, it'll be cheaper and it'll be more convenient. So get in that house as soon as possible, because just like you live in a house, you need to have as they say, a chat over your head, right? You need to have that over your head. The earlier you do it, the better it is, because the chances of you being healthy and fit is always better. So procrastinating this decision, a very bad idea.
In fact, you touched upon that it's more taken as an expense. Okay. And one common thing which people do a mistake is that they feel, what if I outlive the insurance time horizon? I may not get anything. And then yet they start looking at return of premium. Whereas return of premium, the premium that you pay for getting the same premium back returned of if you survive that policy term is far more higher. Mathematically, if you invest the difference in an investment, you will be far better off in getting a much higher amount, okay, in return, vis-a-vis paying a higher return on premium. Yet people try to choose that. Why does this happen?
I just give you I give you an indicative answer. Imagine you were in a house, okay, and I told you that the rent of this house is 100 rupees. Okay, you start living in that house happily. You are enjoying your balcony and you are giving your rent every month, right? And that fixed rent, okay. Real estate can go through the roof, but you will get a fixed rent. Now I tell you, my friend, I really like you as a landlord. Here is my offer to you. Instead of 100 rupees, I will increase the rent by 30 to 40 rupees. So you pay 130 rupees. But as long as you keep the house safe and sound, and whenever you exit your house, I will return back all the rent that you have given to you, that I have taken from you. Now there is one way of objective lens looking at compounding value, future value of money. And then there is this emotional lens of saying, oh, so instead of 100, I pay 130 or 140 rupees. And if I were to exit the house, let's say 30 years later, all the money that I gave you as rent will be given back to me. So I enjoyed peace of mind, and yet I returned all the premiums back. So I think this mindset is, for an Indian consumer, and you can relate to it, we being Indians, that this kind of a conversation is reasonably appealing actually, that I come back. What my personal take on it, I think my personal take on it is that the new age term insurance plans by all leading life insurers have a very interesting construct that I am a big fan of actually. What they've done in the recent times is that, see, term insurance, the primary purpose of term insurance was always cover the period when you have liabilities. So when you have children growing up, you have a dependent family, you have a outstanding liability, you want to cover yourself for that period. Over a period of time, what happened, Tanveer, and I experienced this in the last 15 years being part of this industry, the original duration of coverage for a term insurance used to be coverage till the client is age 60. typically till retirement, because the mindset was, I enjoy this life cover till I am turn 60 or till I retire, because after retirement there will be less liabilities. In the last 6-7 years, what has happened? A large proportion of Indian customers buying term insurance have shown a preference for longer coverage terms.
Correct.
They prefer coverage till 75, 70, 75, 80, 85, right? Even some plans that offer whole life cover.
Whole life cover.
Right? So now, why this change? Because a part of this country started to believe that if I am there till 60, I would still have some kind of liabilities, or they would start to think that, listen, how about looking at it as an estate that I leave back to my family? So if I cover till 85, which is a reasonably long age to cut covered, and if I was to not be around, let's say at age 80, 81, I still leave back a large asset for my family,
Correct.
for my nominees.
Yeah.
If I live till 85, fantastic, I've lived a great life. Now, what the companies have done in this period is that they've created these very smart options which are called special exit values. What this option does is that, unlike the term with return of premium, where I ask my, as a landlord, I say instead of 100, pay 150 rupees and I'll give all the rent back. These guys say you continue to paying 100 rupees. All I'm requesting you is that at age 60, 65, okay, which is reasonably near your retirement, assess once. Do you want to continue the cover or do you want to terminate it? Which means at 60, 65, let's say 2 scenarios, and these are real customer scenarios I'm talking about, because I personally listen to, sales calls, at least 20 sales calls every month. So very interesting 2 scenarios. One scenario where there's a self-employed customer, okay, who's running a shop, his own shop along with his father, is bought term insurance, is planning to buy term insurance, says, guess what? I would want to get covered till 85 because, there is no retirement age in my life.
Correct.
As a shopkeeper, I'll keep on working only, most probably. Different conversation. Then there is a salaried customer who says, I want to buy till 80, 85 because I want those longish cover. But guess what, Weber? My challenge is that at 60 or 65, I might not be having any liability. And at that point in time, I might consider that, why did I buy till 80, 85? I spent so much money, because the moment longer cover you buy, the more premium you pay, right? And therefore, for this segment of customer, the latter that I talked about, there's this special exit value which allows you to get all the premium you paid till date back, and the cover terminates at no extra cost.
Okay, that's interesting.
So these term plans, term with return of premium plans, and these new innovative designs in the last 2.5, 3 years, which is special exit value term plans, where you can actually exit at 60, 65 without increasing the cost of term insurance, and yet exit and get all the premiums back.
In fact, we use a whole life insurance policy as a kind of a legacy planning or estate planning. In fact, a lot of my business friends, for example, the business is valued, say, approximately, hypothetically assume it's a 50 crores business value, okay? And he's got a son and a daughter. He wants to hand over the business to his son because daughter get married, go to different family, and they don't want the interference in the business. So what they do, they buy a 50 crore term insurance, which is for a whole life, and that policy is tagged to the daughter. So if he passes away, the business goes to the son, and the amount from the term insurance whole life policy goes to the daughter. So it's a perfect way of estate planning as well.
Let me give you a very, very interesting example that, my brother was discussing with me on this whole life term insurance or whole life plans. Today, if you were to buy a house for 1 crore, right? Typically 1 crore in a large city like Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, Pune, Hyderabad, right? That's the entry point, right?
Yeah.
For a 1 crore house, the rent would be around 20,000 only, right? Because it will be located in that locality where you have 1 crore house, the 25,000 rent.
Correct.
Now, if you want to buy that 1 crore house, the EMI would be about 1 lakh rupees, right? So 1 lakh EMI versus 25,000 rent, right? Guess what? When it comes to term insurance, the same 20,000 rent will not become 1 lakh if you want to own the house. It will become only 40,000 if you want to own the house. The 1 crore cover for 70, 75, sure, it will come at 20,000 rupees. 1 crore cover for the whole life because you created a permanent asset. You own the house now. Remember the same corollary of being rented in a house? Now from being rent, you now own the house. But for that ownership, you just don't need to pay 5 times like you do it for a house. You just need to pay 2 or 3 times.
Correct.
And therefore, owning a house versus living in a house, or living as a rent. The choice is
in India, we have limit. Otherwise, globally, In fact, there is a concept of jumbo insurance.
Yeah.
Okay, so where you pay a single premium and you get cover for until 125 year, and then you get leverage against that investment. For example, if it's $100 million insurance, sum assured, 20 million is the premium paid. On that $20 million, you pay only 4 million, 16 million given to you as loan, and that investment compounds over a period of time,
Fantastic.
and that's a perfect estate planning they do.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, now coming to this question, that and again a very interesting example. COVID has taught us more than anything else. Any textbooks have taught us. One of my wife's friend, she has 3 kids. Husband passed away. He was just 38. Both were professor. The youngest kid was just about 6 months old when he passed away. Now, being a professor, he had a lot of free time. In the sense, classes were limited. So he used to do his own investment, buy his own insurance policy. So he went into our website, compared the policy, and he picked up the premium which was the lowest. Okay, and he bought a 1 crore term insurance. Now, when his wife went to get the claim because it was 1 crore term insurance, to her utter surprise, the insurance company says you will not get 1 crore. You will get this 1 crore over a period of 10 years. So it was approximately 83,000 rupees per month, which would approximately 10 lakh rupees in a year over a period of 10 years. Now, a lot of people do this kind of mistake. What are the kind of thing one should be very careful about while picking up insurance policy online?
Very, very interesting question, Tanvir. Actually, a very relevant question. My wife keeps asking me this all the time. What to look for when you buy these plans, right? I'll give you another corollary, which is, I think, relatable to our younger audience watching here, okay? There are, in the business of life insurance or insurance, typically are contracts between the customer and the company, right? Usually contracts, right? There is no tangible benefit. Now, there is a car insurance. We all have car insurance, right? 1 year, my car bumps in, I go for indemnifying my loss, and you pay me the money. 1 year contract. Similarly, health insurance, 1-2 year contracts, right?
Correct.
Life insurance, term insurance, 30-year contract. Okay. So when I always say, when you choose life insurance versus when you choose your car insurance provider, life insurance provider or a car insurance provider or even a health insurance provider, the difference is between a Tinder and Shaadi.com. Okay. Because unlike a health insurance or a general insurance, boss, this is Shaadi.com. This is 30, 40, 50 years of commitment together when you sign a contract, when you get into that contract, versus a 1 year renewable contract. You can choose company A today and next year you choose to migrate to company B, right? Now, just to continuing that corollary, when it comes to Shaadi.com or marriage, the first thing you look at is compatibility, family backgrounds, right? And therefore, the first thing to look at, I always say, is the brand power. That is why you'll realize that, in life insurance, the top 5 brands are actually the biggest brands in financial services, not necessarily in the business of health insurance. Top 5 brands are not the biggest, largest banking brands in the world, in the
Very
country,
true, yeah.
right? Which is a fact in front of you. And therefore, when it comes to the business of life insurance, the business of 30-year contracts, the number one recommendation I give is go for a brand that you truly trust. जिस पे भरोसा है, जिसके साथ आपने engage किया हुआ है, someone you heard about, know about, has a long legacy, always do that because these are 30-year contracts. The benefit of that contract will come when you are not around. In health insurance, car insurance, you're there, right? You'll make calls, you'll keep calling your advisor, you'll write emails. Here, imagine a death has happened in a family. I mean, you don't expect the nominee to actually start chasing company for a claim which is for a death, right?
Yes, of
So,
course.
number one is always a good, solid brand. Second, I always believe this new generation believes in a lot of objective conversations. So what has happened over a period of time, all life insurance companies, all these large platforms that sell insurance or term insurance online have started to put out very transparently what is called as the claim paid ratio. I think a reasonably objective, assessment of how this life insurance company does in terms of paying claims, because it's a regulated number. We file it with the regulator, and then the regulator publishes in the annual report. I always recommend go for a company which you have a consistent claim paid ratio performance. Because there'll be some companies that will have 1 year very good performance, next year poor performance. Try and choose the company that has consistently outperformed everyone else on claims paid ratio. Because that is one, see, the only moment of truth in term insurance business is when the claim is to be paid. Let's be honest. Rest servicing, I mean, how much servicing do you need, right? Unlike
No,
a health
but
insurance.
this case was different, Vaibhav. Here, the brand is one of the top 5 brands. Okay, the cover claim ratio of that company is very good. But here, while choosing the policy online, the buyer failed to read that it was a term insurance with an
With the income option.
income option. So now he made that mistake. So, and I feel, given the Indian mindset, we all look for value for money.
Absolutely.
He'll say, "Okay, if I'm getting a 1 crore term insurance for, say, hypothetically 10,000 rupees, and I'm getting 1 crore cover for 15,000, I'll choose the 10,000.
Yes.
That's the mindset. Okay. Given that mindset, he got trapped into that low call. So, what are the things that one should be looking in that? While
So I think the first one, okay, I understand the question. I was
Yeah.
thinking in terms of brand which to choose, but from a benefit structure, which one to choose? I would say step one, once you are in the once you believe that you need term insurance and you're exploring about it, be very, very careful about reading the benefit structure. Because the benefit structures for term insurance plans do vary like this. You can get a full lump sum amount, you can get an income which is spread over a period of time, you can get a combination of lump sum and income. There are plans which have an increasing cover or a decreasing cover. So be very careful about what you are going to purchase, which will, and therefore, I think a lot of people spend a lot of time in comparing. While my recommendation on this specific case is before comparing, spend some amount of time in understanding what is the benefit structure you are trying to buy.
this to help me understand, audience understand a bit more, what are, I know the laundry list, there could be a laundry list of riders and all those stuff. What are the 2-3 most critical things that one should look at? The qualitative aspect, just beyond the quantitative comparison that one does.
So I think right amount of cover. I always suggest that whenever you're buying term insurance or having a conversation about term insurance, the right amount of cover
What's
is
the right cover?
That's a very, very important question, actually. I'll tell you, there are so many different. I mean, today you go on Google and just write how to select the right amount of cover. You'll get a 20 different calculators with 20 different logics.
Because a lot of those people, when they buy a cover at 25, 30, one, their eligibility is low. Two, at that point of time, say a 2 crore or 1 crore cover looks good. But when you actually move your career rank, now, take your career. When you started your career 12 years, 13 years back, so you would, suppose if you bought a 1 crore term insurance, 2 crore term insurance, now the lifestyle that you would be living, you would have outgrown that cover.
Absolutely.
So what should be the strategy? Because at times your eligibility may not be for a higher cover, right? So how do you pace on your cover increase as your lifestyle goes up?
See, the first price to that is, I'll tell you a very interesting one. My grandmother, my late grandmother always used to say in Hindi, beta ghar hamesha औकात से ज़्यादा लेना चाहिए. Buy a house which is more than what you can afford because that is for the future. I have the similar belief on term insurance. The younger you are, the higher eligibility you have in terms of multiple as a function of your income. So if you are 25 or 30 earning 10 lakhs, the amount of cover you can get is clearly about 2.5 crore. But if you are earning 10 lakh at age 40, the maximum cover limit that you will typically get would be about 1.5 to 2 crore. So for the younger customer, I would always say, don't fall into this trap of only 10 times cover. Because if you're younger, you need to buy a much larger cover. Second, if you can afford, if you can stretch your pocket a little bit, always go for an increasing cover option. It might increase only by 5% on a simple interest basis, but still it keeps intact with your inflation or your improved lifestyle.
Very interesting. Yeah.
And third, I believe that you should review your term insurance portfolio every 5 to 7 years. Every 5 to 7 years, review your insurance portfolio. Never lapse your policy. That is one policy that you should never lapse, I believe. Okay, and every 5 to 7 years, review your current lifestyle. Has your expenses gone up? Has your liabilities gone up? Have your accountabilities gone up? If that is the true, your lifestyle has been upgraded, then keep adding more and more cover as you do. So there are a lot of plans in the industry that allow you to top up your life cover over a period of time. Okay. In fact, life stage based increase in cover is a very popular concept in the Indian markets right now. So what we usually, some of us, our companies, they will market that you buy a plan today. On birth of your first child, you can actually increase your cover by 50%.
Oh, interesting.
Okay. Purchase a house, another opportunity to increase your cover by 50%. So try and max out your cover while you're healthy, because the moment you are diabetes or hypertension, the cover cost just becomes unaffordable. So earlier the better, and try for an increasing cover, or review your cover every 7 years, 5 to 7 years.
Well, they see insurance is bought in good faith, right? And there is a merit of giving complete disclosure. But there are a lot of people who possibly, because there's a difference between a smoker and a non-smoker premium. Okay, and I've heard a lot of time people saying, ki, "Oh, I smoke very occasionally." Okay, what are the consequences of such case where you, even if you smoke, say not on a regular basis, and if you're not a kind of a daily smoker, but you're smoking occasionally, what happens in such cases? God forbid something happens to you. What will happen to your claim?
Sorry, I keep using corollaries. Again, it's same as dating versus marriage. Purchasing life insurance is marriage, right? You can choose to not share everything about you while you're dating, but when you're getting married, any successful marriage is based on how honest you were while that marriage, at the start of the marriage, or when you were, let's say, getting into that relationship. Disclose everything that is there to be disclosed. Everything. So even if you are an after dinner smoker on a Friday evening, and there's a question that says, how many cigarettes do you smoke every week? Please write one per week. One, most of the term insurance plans come with medical underwriting, which means you have to undergo a medical process where they will discover, the insurance company will discover through various tests, that you do smoke once per week. But if you do, just like I said, if you want to make that marriage successful, make sure that you disclose as much as you can, because the more you disclose, the chances of your claim getting rejected become almost negligible. I know of no example where a life insurance company is able to repudiate a claim for a case where disclosure has happened on the proposal form and the cause of death is related to that disclosure. Because once the contract is accepted, I've accepted that risk on my book. And if that contract in its proposal form said that there is a case of, let's say, type A diabetes, and even if later the death is due to diabetes, there is no way that I can repudiate a claim. Even if I do, the courts will make me pay, because the courts will tell you that, boss, and all, there are multiple rulings from Supreme Court, High Court, which say if there was a disclosure, whether you took it in consideration or not, if there is a disclosure and the death is due to that disclosure, please pay the claim.
So yeah, I think if the insurance crosses the early period, which is approximately 2 years,
3 years,
even
actually.
3 years, even your suicide is an admissible claim
Suicide after 12 months.
after 12 months.
Yeah. So that's the part of the act as well, that after 12 months, if there is a suicide after purchase of the policy or reinstatement of the policy, if a suicide happens post 12 months, the entire benefit will be paid. And then there's a section 45 of the act which says that if the claim is intimated 3 years after the risk commencement date, then the life insurance company should, fulfill the promise of paying the claim, except in case of outright fraud.
If there's a non-disclosure. So my next
So
question.
non-disclosure claim is paid as per the current act after 36 months.
Okay. So under what scenarios does the claim get rejected then?
See, typically the claim gets rejected for two or three large scenarios. The first one, usually, which is not relevant for this conversation, is a fraud, right? This is the business of 1 rupee paid and 1,000 rupees claim, right? That's the ratio that we operate in term insurance,
Correct.
1,000 times, right, of the premium paid. Now, typically, there are some, cohorts in certain areas where there is outright fraud, and that's usually the rejection. The second classic case of claim rejection that we've experienced is non-disclosure within first 3 years. So you did not disclose that you were a smoker or let's say a chain smoker, and within 2-3 years you ended up dying because of hypertension or because of, let's say, diabetes, or you did not disclose that you were having early stage cancer. You purchased a term insurance policy and God forbid something happened, the cancer became latest major stage, and something happened. In those cases where there is outright disclosure and the life insurance company can identify that the customer knew about this risk or was aware about it, did not disclose it, and bought the policy. So utmost good faith, as we said.
So they
Important point though,
Sorry.
important point though, if you are not aware about that risk while at the time of filling proposal form. So, for example, imagine a customer who actually has early stage cancer but is not diagnosed yet. okay, and is not aware and is not diagnosed yet. He or she buys term insurance, gets the contracts effected, and then, due to unfortunate events, eventually discovers that he has cancer, which becomes a major stage cancer, and there is a death that happens. The insurance company will pay the claim. Because at the time of proposal form filling, while you were undergoing the risk assessment and getting on our books, right, you did not know that you had early stage cancer. Right?
Ah.
Even though the cancer might have started before you filled the contract. Utmost good faith at the point of underwriting.
I'm really enjoying the conversation. So I'll ask now a couple of questions beyond term insurance,
Oh,
if
yes,
it's
yes,
okay.
yes.
In fact, so I come from a business background. So, in fact, and I've seen this lot of turmoil happening when, as a business owner, when you actually running your business and you've taken a lot of loan, everything, okay, and inevitably, if the business passes through a tough time, and God forbid something happens to you, and you're having a lot of liability, your entire life saving goes for a toss. The insurance world provides a lot of business owners to ring fence that kind of a situation. Unfortunately, the awareness is very poor.
Absolutely.
So, can you throw some light on how business owners can protect their hard-earned money by investing in married women's protected or any insurance that can be set aside under the Married Women's Protection Act, and they can ring fence their hard-earned money and not let it go?
Absolutely. I think that's a very, very good clause that, that is enabled by the regulations or by regulators or by the government, some of the rules and regulations that we have, which allow. So when you buy a insurance policy or a life insurance policy under MWP or Married Women Protection Act, what happens is you have to, you can only choose the nominee as your spouse or just their children. Here, in this case, the nominees cannot be edited or changed in the future. That's the second important point. So once chosen, the act itself mandates that you cannot edit the nominees later. Okay. The advantage is that when you buy a policy under this act, no creditors, debtors, banks, financial institutions can stake a claim on the benefit of that policy in case of your death. So I have seen a live example, by the way, where a businessman, right, just like the example you gave, having a reasonably medium-sized business of running these trading houses, inventory trading houses, and then unfortunate event happening. Fortunately, the individual here had purchased the term insurance under MWPA, and there was actually a NBFC that put a claim, a stake on the benefits paid, that this money belongs to me because there's a large outstanding credit. Business credit, where he was the sole proprietor, and taking this case to the court, and the court ruling very clearly that, my friend, to the company or to the institution, this policy was purchased under MWPA. There is no chance that you can get any stake. This is a real example I'm telling you about, 2021 again. You have any stake on this benefit. If you want to settle this, you can settle this out of the court, but surely here I'll have to give the ruling that the wife will get the complete benefit of this policy.
This MWPA can be tagged to any policy, whether it could be term or it could be any investment and insurance policy.
Yes.
It could be done to anything.
Absolutely, yes.
So, one more question on the new age. See, insurance as an industry is also evolved over a period of time, and there are a couple of products which we feel have really come up very beautifully. Okay, especially more as an investment product. Okay, and I'll pick up one both from equity and one from debt perspective, and I would want to know your thoughts around it. So, as a company, what we do, we create a strategic asset allocation based on investment led product. But uh, when you actually want to balance the portfolio based on the market outlook, whether the large cap is good, mid cap is good, or a small cap is good, you change the allocation or change between equity to debt and vice versa. So there is a lot of tax implication. Whereas the new age zero cost ULIP, okay, which has zero premium allocation charge, which has zero policy administration charge, and it has only other two charge, which is mortality and the other is fund management charge. There also it's capped to approximately 1.35%. So it is at par with any mutual fund. Now the biggest advantage is that up to a certain limit of premium, which is 2.5 lakh, the uh, earlier era it used to be uh,
No capital gain.
no capital gains,
Even now it
no
is
short term
true.
capital gains, right? So now, given that kind of a situation, we use that as a tactical asset allocation. But there is a lot of myth around it that ULIP is a bad boy. So what are your thoughts around that?
I think really what has happened is that there was a period of time, I think the 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, when there were these products in unit linked plans, as we call it, which had very large charge structures, very heavy charge structures. I think thanks to a very progressive regulator that we have in our industry, a large part of that problem was addressed through very smart regulations, which in a way capped the expenses that can be, placed on these products. I think I agree with you 100%. Fantastic product, these zero charge products. I mean, I am a big fan. I'm a consumer. I have bought two of them. A large part of my money investment, monthly investment goes into it. As you clearly said, number one, there is no allocation administration charges. So it's as transparent as it can get. You have an additional life cover. There is no capital gain till 2.5 lakh rupees of premium. And my favorite part is this power of switching or redirecting your money through different asset classes without going through the pain of exit load. I mean, I
Exit
understand.
load and no short term capital gains.
Absolutely. So there is no, and then the whole rigmarole of the money coming out, coming in your account, your chartered accountant spending time with you while you're filing your taxes. You know that old drill, right? And therefore, these products I think are very clean, neat, and very very effective for long term planning. See, the part that that maybe some of the prospects or customers find a barrier, but I find the biggest advantage is the 5-year lock-in. Some people will tell me, or some of my friends would tell me, these are very great, good products, Weber, but you have to have a 5-year lock-in. And what I tell them is, my friend, don't think 5-year, you should have a 10-year lock-in. What else is disciplined savings otherwise?
Correct.
I mean, the problem, a big problem that a part of this new generation will face is because of this access to money. They want money to grow, but they want access all the time, which means how will they generate wealth? The only short way of generating wealth, as our forefathers or our older generations have taught us, is by staying committed and staying invested.
Yes, consistency is more important than intensity.
Disciplined monthly systematic saving with very good lock-ins. I say lock-ins are actually a benefit because they make sure that you do not touch that money on drop of a hat. I want to go for a vacation. Let's take out money. That is not exactly what you want to protect yourself against, right?
Correct.
When it comes to long-term wealth creation. So I think these are fantastic products that give a lot of value to the customers. And as you said, the expense ratios or the FM's fund management charges are not very high. I mean, when I do mathematics around 5th, 6th year, some of these products at a reasonable market return of 15% actually become superior to some of the mutual funds that you see in the industry today. So I'm a big fan of them. Yes, agree.
In fact, another product which is called fancy. In fact, I feel people are not able to visualize so far because there's an interesting study also which happened in Bombay. And when I actually read about that research, it actually made me clear my view on why people are ignoring this. I'll come to that. So the product is the guaranteed income product. Okay. Now we use for a retirement payout.
Yeah.
So when you do investment, we say asset allocation is the holy grail of investing. You should have your own equity, debt, gold, all this. But what happens when you invest in a debt product, which is market oriented? If the interest rate drops over a period, as the Indian economy grows, okay, and you look at any developed economy, the interest rate has fallen over a period of time. And if you look at our history also, when I started my career way back in 95, 96, 95, the interest rate used to be close to about 12%, 14%. And over a period of time now, it's come down to your GSEC, it's about 680. So it is half that.
Yeah.
So when I envisage another 25, 30 year down the line, your interest rate could be as low as 2%.
Absolutely.
Okay. So imagine your overall portfolio debt allocation will be drawing a much lower interest.
Absolutely.
Now here, there is a product which tells you can lock in your fixed income rate for the next 30 years also at between 6.5%, 7% tax free. Okay. But people fail to visualize that because they equate that if I keep money in equity for a long term period, I may get 12%. But what they fail to realize is that the debt may not remain there. And today, if the equity is delivering 12%, because the fundamental rule is that your GDP plus inflation is what the nominal growth would be. And if the interest goes to 2%, it is inevitable that inflation will also fall.
Absolutely.
So equity will not deliver. But unfortunately, yet, people tend to ignore that guaranteed income product from an asset allocation perspective. They feel it's insurance is good for protection, not for as an investment. So your thoughts on that?
No, I completely agree with you. I think just like you have equity has two colors, right? High liquidity equity, like investing in a stock market, a mutual fund, or a low liquidity, disciplined, long-term wealth creation equity, which is like a unit-linked plan with zero charge ULIP that we talked about. Similarly, in debt, I think I completely agree with you that the big advantage that these guaranteed income plans, long-term guaranteed income plans bring to the table is this: taking away the reinvestment risk from the customer. See,
Yes.
today the big problem for anyone who's doing a deposit or putting money in a fixed deposit or putting money in some of these debts is that the assurance or the guarantees is every year renewable, right? I mean, the FD rates we had 2 quarters back versus last quarter versus this quarter, there's actually a 350 bips delta between them if you look at it. From October 2025 or 2024 to February 2025 to July 2025, you actually can see the volatility of the deposit rates for the same 1 year period if you want to invest. Now, great if you want a very high liquidity way of investing money where you have access to the money, smart ways of doing that, right? Debt funds or some of these deposits. But a part of your money, a part of your financial planning must have long-term debt lock-ins. And I think the guaranteed income plans are a fantastic way of doing it. One, up to 5 lakh rupees of premium, you have a 1010D benefit, which means it's completely tax-free. Second, the entire reinvestment risk is passed on to the financial services provider, which is the life insurer, because for a 30, 40-year contract, you don't need to worry that next year what will be the deposit rate for me to earn money, or 3 years later or 5 years later. So you actually locked in a long-term return. Basically, you've the best of the times of the Indian interest rate cycle lock in today, right? It's like that. And third, I think, which is something underplayed, is the life cover part. I strongly believe these plans give you a very important aspect, which is also life cover. Some of these products, I mean, at least I know of, that have a very strong benefit of, the policy continuing even in case of your death.
Correct.
Which I find very valuable because, see, you can plan for long-term wealth generation while you are there. What about the long-term wealth generation when you will not be there?
Waiver of premium.
Because the term cover will immediately come and give it to your family and will give you relief, but will not create wealth for your future. It will not solve for your family's wife's retirement. It will not for your children's education 20 years down the line. Some of these plans with their automatic continuance of policy in case of a death, disease or disability actually solve those problems.
So, in fact, the last question I want to ask you, since you touched upon the tax part, the tax regulation has changed a lot. Okay, the old and new tax regime. And last year we got a bumper kind of a tax relief in terms of a new tax regime which came out. But that disallows you to get any 80C benefit by investing in insurance product. Okay. So do you think that the new tax regime will be a deterrent of people buying life insurance product?
Well, I think the answer lies in the data itself. It's been now 2 to 3 years. Large number of people have moved to the new tax regime. The industry keeps growing at 15%. The sum assured has been on an increase. I think modern consumers or modern Indian customer has understood that the value of life insurance goes way beyond tax planning. Way beyond tax planning. So I see absolutely no risk of these, people moving into the new tax regime. There's a 1010D benefit, which is for non-unit linked policies less than 5 lakh, where the maturity benefit or the living benefit continues to be tax-free, which is very valuable. So I don't think there is any, and we can see it in data. The industry keeps growing. I don't think there'll be any impact around it. It'll continue to grow. It's a big demand that we have in this country today.
Thank you so much, Vaibhav. I really had a great time talking to you, and thank you so much for sharing your deep insight on the insurance industry. I'm sure the user will enjoy every bit of it, and there's a lot to learn from this session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tanveer. Absolutely. Thank you.